Well, as Tom mentioned, Telstra is starting to come back into favour with investors. While the focus has been on its future in broadband, in the background a new threat is emerging: margin shredding. No-frills mobile phone deals, which, if they follow the lead of Europe, could soon gobble up a third of the lucrative mobile market here. Neal Woolrich reports.
Great, and we're still turning them around in good time. Sure. When we first looked at Australia, we said, this is impossible. They're paying twice as much as Europeans for the same commodity product. And there's no reason for it.
What we are doing is reshaping the market.
Just as budget airlines like Jetstar and Tiger have shaken up the aviation industry, now a new mobile phone upstart wants to give the big telcos a run for their money.
Hello and welcome to Amaysim. This is Sarah speaking.
In fact, we weren't long into our feasibility study in 2009 when we realised this was a market that was screaming out for this type of product, and the customers really needed it.
Amaysim have brought two things to the Australian mobile market: a lean, low-cost operating model, as well as some innovative pricing.
Now, would you like a new number?
Amaysim opened for business in November. Instead of periodic contracts and cap plans, the company is offering a pay-as-you-go mobile service at fixed rates.
To put it bluntly, I think caps are crap, because what they really do is they lure you into the illusion that you're protected. And first of all, a cap is not really a cap. Most of these products, you run into the risks of overspending, so they should be called floor, I think, not caps. And secondly, it's very hard for any consumer to exactly find the so-called sweet spot in these plans.
A point reinforced by the ACCC this week, which fined Optus $178,000 for misleading advertising on its max cap plans. To keep its costs down, Amaysim isn't opening any shopfront stores. Instead, it's using established retailers like the major supermarkets, Dick Smith, 7-Eleven and Caltex to distribute its products.
The cost of acquire are probably 1/5, sometimes even 1/10 of what the big brands spend when they subsidize phones and they have their big shops.
Rolf, Hansen and 3 other German executives founded Amaysim last year after selling their European business Simyo. He says low-cost mobile carriers have captured around 30% market share in parts of Europe.
It's a sustainable business model. Secondly, it has dramatically changed the market because not only small, nimble and active players like us have driven that model, but following 1 or 2 years later, all big brands came back with an answer.
We think over time the impact is going to be minimal. The reason being is that they are resellers, they don't own infrastructure, and that makes it difficult for them to compete when prices come down. And the fact that other telcos use bundling strategies, they have no other products in other categories and they do not have the ability to cross-subsidise.
Rival telco TPG has been offering fixed-price services for a year and a half, and it accounts for about a quarter of the company's new mobile phone customers. Craig Levy argues the major telcos are unlikely to start offering pay-as-you-go services, but instead go to market indirectly through resellers, known as mobile virtual network operators or MVNOs.
If you look at the larger players, they are trying to protect their premium brands, and the reason for this is because they have existing customer numbers and existing revenue lines, and they cannot simply just drop the price of their product. It's going to affect their financials quite a lot.
I would suspect at this stage that the main competitive impact from Amaysim is being felt more by the existing MVNOs that are also targeting the very low end of the market rather than the incumbents themselves.
IBISWorld's Robert Bryant says the big telcos are instead focused on tapping into the more lucrative market for data downloads, which has been enabled by 3G technology.
Telstra, as an example, over the last 2 years, their voice calls or the revenue from voice calls within Telstra Mobile has dropped by around 6%, whilst data has increased by 22%. So you can see a very dramatic shift there in the way people are spending their money.
Low-cost carriers have 3% market share in Australia, although Amaysim is forecasting that to rise to around 20%. The company won't say how many customers it has right now, but another fixed-rate provider, like Mobile, has secured 170,000 subscribers in its first 3 months after launching in December.
The biggest execution risk we had when we launched was convincing Australians that Amaysim's price of 15 cents a minute is very cheap. It's exceptionally cheap because most mobile subscribers in Australia do not know what they pay per minute.
Like any new entrant, they've spent a lot of money on marketing in the beginning, but the question is, will they be able to sustain this marketing momentum? We believe that it's going to peter out over time, and unfortunately that's going to make consumers forget about them, and they're not going to have that kind of impact.
OneTel. Switch to OneTel.
And many Australians will remember the OneTel experience, which rode the dot-com wave around the turn of the century, but was brutally wiped out.
OneTel was 12 years ago. OneTel as a reseller was quite a successful reseller. It got into real trouble when it went out and tried and bought a network and spent $1 billion of other people's money doing that, and failed miserably.
Amaysim is hoping its customer service centre based in Sydney will also be a point of difference from its bigger rivals and help keep customer churn rates low. But whether that will be enough to loosen the grip the big three incumbents have over Australia's mobile market is another question altogether.